Hello everyone, Bruce Evans Studios here with another banger video. Um, this is a pretty different type of video. There's actually a video I've been wanting to make for some time, and I'm finally doing it. This is shockingly a different type of video though. It's not like the usual content I make, where it's either just gameplay videos or discussion videos or other types of videos. So this is definitely a new one. Um, this is a video of me talking about what my wish list of killers that I think would be cool if they were ever added in to become the killer, especially, well, Recode. Um, of course, this is just a wish list. This is just my opinion and all that. So, obviously, like, it's very possible that some of the characters that appear in my wish list will most likely not ever come to this game. But I thought it'd be cool to like maybe come up with some kind of concept for my wish list of these certain killers that I think would be really cool if they actually were added in to become a killer recode or just become a killer in general. Um, so let's start off with my first wish list. So the first killer that I would love to see make appear and become the killer, Recode, is Colossus from Sonic.exe The Disaster. Now, if you guys don't know what Sonic.exe The Disaster is, it's an asymmetrical horror game where there's multiple survivors, which are obviously Sonic characters, and then there is one killer, which is usually three of the different EXEs you can play as. You can either play as Sonic.exe himself, Tails Doll, or of course the one I just mentioned for this wish list, Colossus. Now, if you don't know what Colossus is, I'm pretty sure like so many people who play TD would know who Colossus is by now. But to those who don't know who Colossus is basically this big giant like he's like this big demonic looking Sonic, except he's like taller and he's got like a wide open black mouth and one of his arm and he's got like a big mutated like red arm with spikes on it. Trust me, look up Colossus, Sonic Disease Disaster, and you'll know what I mean. He's got a really cool design. So Colossus, I think, would be a really cool addition to become the Killer Recode. Again, probably not a possibility. Now, Colossus was actually in Become the Killer as some time ago. Actually, he was actually in the game, but he was actually in the Legacy version of Become the Killer. But he was only a dev exclusive. But I think there could be a possibility that he could be made as a public playable killer and Recode, but with a completely different and more simple like model for him to actually fit in the game like become the killer. Like like yeah, he could have like like of course he would have the more simple like Robloxian like model, but except he would look like Sonic, except he would with one of his arms will look more like mutated like with the spikes and all that. Some kind of model like that, considering the models in Become the Killer are more simple Robloxian avatar like models. So I'm thinking like obviously Colossus's design would obviously be an avatar of course, but it would look like Colossus as well. Um Now for his move set and his stats. I think his stats, he'd be a more like a tankier killer. Like I think like he would have like 150 health, and I think he would also possibly I think his movement speed could be like 35% movement speed as well, either 35 or 30. I'm thinking 30 possibly because the moves that he would have would definitely sound like a lot. Um, Obviously we saw with attack, which his first attack he would basically pretty much like in TD, he will deal like a shit ton of damage, but again, he's slow, which is why he's gonna deal a fuck ton of damage. And then we get his next ability, which is his charge. Basically, he will charge at full speed and will basically deal like any damage to any survivor he makes contact with. However, it wouldn't be as powerful as like his basic damage. Then again, it'll probably do like less damage if you hit a survivor with a charge. Um, and of course, it will have like a cooldown as well. I'm thinking like I think the charge should have like possibly like I think like a 15-second cooldown would sound fair. I think 15 or a 20-second cooldown would sound fine for Colossus. Next ability, of course, we got his block, just like in the original game too. Pretty much, works exactly as extended. You when you use the block ability, Colossus should stand still, and if any, and about another thing, I am gonna balance that out too. Make it so it only works on melees, so you can't block like bullets or anything. You can only block like melee attacks. So his block ability would mainly be good for like against Runner, mechs, and ninja really, or survivors if they're using like mill, or just the avatar survivors if they're just using like a mill weapon or something. Um, but obviously blocking will not work against like bullets or something. Obviously, if you do get melee as Colossus while blocking, obviously, it would block the attack, and basically you just continue on your slaughtering Madhouse, of course. Um, Now, of course, we get his next ability, which, of course, it would be his grab ability. Now, of course, like in TD, when you grab a survivor, you can beat them to death. And during the time when the upcoming 1.4 update was coming, before Sonic Disaster was taken down, yes, I also want to mention that Sonic Disaster was taken down. But in the upcoming 1.4 update, Colossus was going to be able to draw survivors. Now, and Become the Killer, I think his grab ability should work completely different. Yes, it should work as the same. Um, Oh yeah, the cooldown for block. I think block's cooldown should be like I think like maybe like 18 seconds. Alright, now let's go back to his grab ability. So how his grab ability should work and become a killer, if possible. Basically he swings his arms out too, right? However, if he successfully grabs Survivor, instead of like again, I think it should like work differently if you become the killer, because I don't know how you can make it so you can attack them while holding the survivor. So I think what Graf should do, if it is possible to become the killer, again, this is just a wish list, so it's most likely that these characters would never be added in Become the Killer Recode. But I thought it'd be really cool for someone like Colossus to be added in there, if it's even possible. Um, So how grab should work is that when you grab a survivor, Colossus would just hold him with one hand, basically choking the survivor. And obviously the survivor will take very rapid amount of tiny bits of damage while being choked. And of course, when the survivor's health reaches zero, they just die. And I think that's just about it for what I think his moveset and what his stats could be. Now, the last thing, how much would he cost? How many tokens would you need in order to unlock Colossus? Considering like yes, he has 150 health. Again, that's I think how much he could have. Considering he's gonna have a lot of abilities that would really help him in the wrong one. Because of that reason alone, again, having a lot of abilities that will definitely help him a lot. I think he should cost like 10k tokens. I think either 10k or 15k tokens. Yeah, I'm thinking like either 10k or 15k would be a fair amount of cost for him. Because again, yes, he's slow, but he's got like a lot of abilities that will help him in the long run. So I think it makes sense for him to really cost that expensive because he's gonna sound really strong. So obviously he needs to be really expensive. That way, like you know, yeah. And I should make it so only one person. I think either only one or two people can play as Colossus. Because again, he's gonna sound really overpowered. So I think it would be fair if only one or two people can play as Colossus, because we can't have like a shit ton of Colossus, otherwise the game would just be unfun for the survivor side. So I'm thinking like either one or two limits for Colossus of how many players should play as him and become the killer. So that is my first wish list, which is Colossus from Sonic.exe. I know he was already become the killer during the Legacy era, but again, he was only a dev exclusive. But again, if it's possible, he could be like an actual playable character in public, if it's even possible, like a full-on different like model, which again could really just be an avatar that looks like Colossus. And his move sets, while some would probably most likely be the same, some of his abilities could be a little different. I don't know, but that is my first wish list for Become the Killer. Now, now we get to my second wish list for Become the Killer. My second wish list for Become the Killer is the bacteria from the backrooms. Now, if you don't know what the backrooms is, it's pretty much like a analog horror sort of scenario that is based off of an internet horror called Liminal Space. Pretty much where you are trapped in some kind of random rooms all alone, and that's pretty much what the backrooms is based off of. And basically, the backrooms is an analog horror where basically someone will be in the real world and then just out of nowhere they'll end up going through like the ground and ending up inside these random rooms. Now, of course, the backrooms has these things called levels. There are some levels that are safe, some levels that are more, empty and neutral, and then there are levels that are extremely dangerous. And of course, there are multiple different entities throughout the backrooms and the backrooms fandom. And the bacteria, basically the cannon monster of the backrooms, would be a perfect fit for Become the Killer, I believe. Now, how would he work for Become the Killer? Let's begin with his stats and how he should work for Become the Killer. Um, for starters, I think he would be a rage state sort of killer, which means he can only attack when he is raging. So basically, how he works is that he would be walking at first. However, when you select the attack ability as a bacteria, you will go in this angry raging state, and I think it should increase your sprint and when you're in your raging state, your sprint speed should be like 45, 45 sprint speed. I think would be fine enough, or 43, or 44. I don't know. I'm thinking 44 would fit perfectly fine for the bacteria. Now, of course, I would balance it out by making it so like I think like 120 health would be fine. Um, Now what's next? I think either 120 or 110 health would be fine. Because again, we basically would have already have killers that would be stronger than him. So we kind of need, if we ever add in like something like the bacteria, he needs to be a little weaker. So I think 110 health would be fine. And in case of damage, I think he will deal like a lot of damage. Not as much as like the Shy Guy or anything, but like he would definitely deal a lot of damage. But his attack cooldown would be like somewhat a little long, most likely. And basically his rage mode should last like not too long. Kind of like, I don't know, maybe like 30 seconds, I believe. Maybe 20 seconds, 15. I think 20 or 15 seconds would be an okay enough. Because again, we don't need another dweller. We don't need another like dweller scenario or another shy guy or anything. We need like, again, basically it's another rage insane killer, but like, he'd be a little, weaker and balanced if that was the case. But again, we already have killers that attack you when in a rage mode. Um, and I think that would be my wish. That is my wish list for. Oh yeah, how much tokens would he cost? Considering he will hit like a truck when in his raging state, however, he's got like somewhat a weak amount of health, kind of like somewhere close to the basic amount of health that a survivor would have. Yeah, he basically would hit like a truck and would basically, but he would be like somewhat, like he would have like a weak amount of health, you know? So I'm thinking like maybe, I think like maybe 2,000 tokens would be okay. Either 2,000 or 15. Oh, wait, no. Either 2,000 or 1,500 tokens would be fine. Now, that is my second wish list, which is, well, the bacteria from the back rooms. Alright, now we get to my third wish list. My third wish list is Lord X. Now, Lord X was actually in Become the Killer during the Legacy era of Become the Killer. He was actually one of the playable killers you can actually play as and Become the Killer. Now, considering he was in Become the Killer at one point, there could be a possible chance that he may actually make his return in Recode. But again, it's a possibility that he could return. I'm not entirely sure on that. Um, Now, obviously, he considering it's another Sonic EXE sort of scenario, he would basically be another fast sort of killer. However, he would not be as fast as like Sonic.exe or Supersonic EXE, because Supersonic.exe and Recode runs at 50 sprint speed, while regular Sonic.exe I think he runs at like 46 or something, 47. I don't know. So Lord X, I think, should run at like probably 43 or 44 sprint speed. I'm not entirely sure. And of course, considering in Legacy he was basically a slightly stronger EXE. However, he has like some kind of downside. So let's talk about his stats and how he could work in Recode if he ever makes his return. So obviously, just like Legacy, he should have 100 health, just like how he did in Legacy, or 90 health. I think 90 health, or maybe I think 190 health, considering that's usually the amount he would have in Legacy. However, his sprint speed I think should be like, you know, probably like maybe 43 or 44. So he's not as like strong as like regular Sonic.exe in some way. Um, Now, of course, basically he would deal a bit more damage, considering he's gonna be like slower. Considering like I think he could be like slower than Sonic.exe in a way, it'll kind of make sense that he deals a bit more damage than Sonic.exe when he attacks. And of course, I actually thought of an ability for Lord X. Um, So instead of like being able to go invisible like Sonic.exe or Super Sonic.exe, I think Lord X's ability should be like some kind of charge ability. Basically how it works, kind of like how it works in Outcome Memories, where in Outcome Memories he'll start like blinking and flashing red rapidly before he charges Survivor. Kind of similar to that. Um, but I think it could work a little differently, possibly. I think in Become the Killer Recode, how the charge should work is that when it's used, Vortex would blink red rapidly, and after like 1 second, he'll begin flying towards Survivor, or in that case, charging towards Survivor. If he successfully hits Survivor, he will deal damage to them. However, the damage will be less. He will deal less damage to them with the charge than he will be able to do with his basic attack. You know, again, for the sake of balance, it makes sense that he will deal more damage with his basic attack instead of like, his ability. So yes, that would kind of like I think that maybe could be like how his charge should work. But again, it'll deal less damage than his basic attack for balance reasons, obviously, if that's even the case. Um, Other than that, yeah, that's kind of about it for Lord X. That's really all I can think about for Lord X. Now, again, he was in the game during the Legacy area, so if it's possible, it'll be really cool if he makes his return in Recode. Now, how much tokens would he cost? Um, I think he should cost about. Well, considering he's going to be possibly a little stronger than Sonic DXC, I think it would make sense that he costs like, I think 3,000 would be fine because he's going to be a little stronger anyway. I think 3,000 tokens would be okay, or maybe like, I don't know. I'm thinking like either 2,500 tokens or 3,000 tokens. So I also thought of possible. Oh yeah, I even thought of possible skins for Lord X. Yes, skin concepts for Lord X if he ever makes his return and become the killer Recode. So this is the third and possibly only wish list that I think should have skins. So Lord X's first skin should be 2011 X, which is basically Lord X's past self. Because if you guys don't know Sonic.exe lore, Lord X and 2011 X are actually the same entity. So it pretty much makes sense for 2011X to just be a skin for Lord X because they're really the same entity. They're the same person. Makes total sense. And I think his second skin should be 2017X. Now 2017X is pretty much well, he's pretty much X if he was way too obsessed with Sonic. And basically 2017X is so obsessed with Sonic to the point he believes he is the real Sonic. Now again, I don't know if these skins are even possible to be added in for skins, but if that is the case, that would sound pretty cool. Um, and I think Lord X's last skin should be like a Decade skin, like a Decade Lord X, which pretty much would be a reference to like a certain artwork of Lord X being completely like dead looking, like he looks dead and his whole body is like horribly decayed. So that would be a cool skin too, like a decayed Lord X skin for just Lord X. So yeah, three skins for Lord X. That would be cool if that wish list ever happened too. 2011X, 2017X, and decayed skin for Lord X. So there you have it. This is my third wish list for Become the Killer Recode. Alright, now we get to my fourth wish list for I think that should come and become the killer. So I think my fourth wish list for who should come and become the killer Recode is Gasman. Now Gasman was actually a playable killer in Legacy era of Become the Killer, so maybe there is a possible chance that he also can return. Now, what does Gasman actually do during the Legacy area? Well, Gasman was pretty much slow, but he was tanky and he did a lot of damage. Um, and he had a very nice gimmick to him where he can actually jump really high in the air. Like he was actually able to jump really high in the air, which was good against dealing with like I think campers or so, I believe. Like people who like to camp on top of like, high ground and such. So I guess I don't really have to say much about Gasman, considering his movesets would most likely be the same if he ever to make a return. I think the only difference is that his stats and abilities might get tweaked or he might get reworked. And honestly, I don't really know what kind of rework moveset ideas I have for him. But, however, I think it'd be cool for Gasman to make a return and become the killer Recode, if it's even possible. Because I actually like playing as Gasman sometimes. So it'd be really cool for him to make a return and Recode. Again, if that is the case, he might get tweaked a bit for the sake of balance, or he might get like some kind of new ability or so. Not entirely sure on that, but only time to tell if that ever really ever happens. But again, who knows? There's a possibility that he will return, or maybe he won't. Who knows? But anyways, that's pretty much it for my fourth wish list. Just Gasman. Alright, so now we get to my last wish list. And the last wish list is actually going to be Cartoon Cast. Yes, Cartoon Cat from Trevor Henderson. Now, just like Gasman and Lord X, Cartoon Cat was also in Become the Killer during the Legacy era. So yes, three fucking killers in a row in his wish list. That would be really cool to see if they can ever return in Recode. Um, now, so what is So considering we already kind of knew what Cartoon Cat does in the legacy version of Become the Killer, he's pretty much kind of like he's pretty much had the same stats as like killers like Gaspan and such, except he like I think he's like a little tankier and he does like pretty much the same amount of damage, I believe. So he pretty much has the same stats as like some other killers like Gasman and Corrupted Noob during the Legacy era of Become the Killer. So then again, I don't really know how he could really work and recode here. Maybe like tweak his stats again as well to balance him out, I guess. However, I do think Cartoon Cat should have some kind of new ability in Become the Killer Recode if it's possible. So so I think the only ability he should really have is like I think he should have like some kind of ability where like if it's even possible, I think I don't know if it even is possible, but if it is possible, he could have some kind of like ability where like he can stretch his arms out or something, and if he somehow manages to grab a survivor while stretching his arm out, he'll pull the survivor back towards him and he'll begin to strangle them until the survivor's health reaches zero. Of course, the survivor's health can actually escape too by simply spamming a certain button to escape Cartoon Cat's grabs to make it fair. I also forgot to mention that when talking about Colossus, so yeah, just to say that real quick, in the Colossus wish list, if Colossus grabs you, you will be able to actually escape his grabs too. I completely forgot to mention that, and I apologize. Back to Cartoon Cat though. So yeah, I think Cartoon Cat should have like some kind of ability, if possible, where he basically would stretch his arm out in long range to attempt to grab a survivor. However, he will also stand still while doing this, which will basically give the survivor some time to like be able to dodge. However, if they do end up getting grabbed, Cartoon Cat can just pull them back and will begin strangling them until their health reaches zero. But of course, again, the survivor can also spam a button to free themselves from Cartoon Cat's grasp. But that's really all I can think about for Cartoon Cat. I don't really know what else to. Because again, he was in Become the Killer Legacy as well. I don't really know how he can work in Recode, considering he did pretty much have the same stats as like certain other killers in Legacy. But I don't know. Maybe if that is the case. Maybe Harry Road could like do some kind of rework with him or something. Then again, I don't know. But I think it would be really cool for Cartoon Cat to make its return and become a killer. Um, I also thought of a skin for him as well. And it's pretty simple. Cartoon Dog. Just like Become the Killer Legacy, I think Cartoon Dog would definitely be a skin for Cartoon Cat because Cartoon Dog was actually a skin for Cartoon Cat in Legacy. So I think it would make sense if he was a skin for him in Recode. Or maybe not. Maybe Cartoon Cat can. I don't know. I'm thinking it makes sense for Cartoon God to be a skin as well, considering he was really a skin for Cartoon Cat in the Legacy era. And yeah, that's just about it. My last wish was Cartoon Cat. And that's just about it for my videos. Now, who knows? Now, whether or not if my wish list is ever somehow ends up making it into the game or not, I think I had a blast talking about these characters and how they could work and become the killer Recode. Again, I don't think some of them will ever end up in Recode, but if some of them do, then that will be really cool. I don't know if my concept of like how their abilities could be like would ever end up in the game, however. Who knows? But again, possibilities are possible. Um yeah, that's just about it for my wish list of my wish list of killers that I think would be really cool to see appear and become the killer Recode. I'm Busaba Studios, and that's it for this video. Peace.